Here's a good question. What is the meaning of life? No, I'm serious. How do you explain to yourself why you woke up this morning? I understand, yeah, tough question. But don't worry, there are ready options. You just have to choose. So, what is the meaning of life? Serving God, the Vatican says. And it was said everywhere in the Middle Ages. Life is given to us by God, and time on earth is only preparation for eternal life. No, the meaning of life is to serve the people. Answered people in the USSR and other 20th century countries will develop human capabilities and send civilization to distant stars. No, that's not the meaning of life. Everybody in the West has been saying it for the last 50 years. The answer to the ultimate question of life in the universe and all such stuff is 42. What? 42? Enough. Turn off the video, next video, so to speak. But wait, that's the answer. Based on 1 million years of computation given by the supercomputer in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But why 42? Yes, why? Okay, but why not? The question of what is the meaning of life can't have a simple or short answer. Only you can make sense of your life. That's what the author said in his book in the early 80s. Then, postmodernism was trendy. And no one was looking for a common ideology. Postmodernism, or just postmodern. You've probably heard that word. It tends to describe artists displaying a urinal in a museum or sticking a banana to a wall. In fact, it's much more interesting. Pre-modern, modern, and postmodern are all different paradigms of thinking. Let's make it simpler. A paradigm is a worldview. That is a collective view of the world order. In different countries and different eras, different people had different worldviews. But they had something in common. America looked at the world like this. Germany in the 30s, absolutely different. The Soviet Union looked the other way. Generations X, Y, Z measure periods of only 20 years, which is very little. They were invented by marketers to sell you more M&Ms or IKEA. But there are only 3 global eras and cultures: pre-modern in traditional society, modern in the industrial one, and postmodern in the world of mass culture and the internet. This sounds confusing, sure, but give me half an hour and I'll tell you the stuff taught in sociology, philosophy, and culturology courses. I'm going to be saving you a lot of time and tell you how our ancestors and our parents saw the world and how different worldviews mix at the same time right now. Now, you'll learn why the Middle Ages were so miserable, why countries were constantly at war, what kind of future was planned in the past, why great ideologies collapsed, how the whole world became a text, why new sincerity is popular nowadays, how people of other eras used to think, and why modern generations don't support the past. Yup, Jan. What do you think is common between an ancient Greek philosopher, a medieval Chinese, and a Russian merchant of Ivan the Terrible's era? Well, actually, not so much. But if you look closely at how they thought, it turns out that they thought very similarly. Until the 15th century, that is, before the advent of science. Everyone lived in the era of pre-modern, and thought in very similar patterns. Take the peasant, the citizen of Athens, and the merchant. The center of their worldview is God. For one, it's Zeus. For another, it's Christ. For the third, it's Buddha. Ordinary mortals never chose the gods. They believed in the same things that their fathers and grandfathers believed in, and so on. But not metaphorically. Like hanging an icon in my car or a cross, and that's it, now I'm a believer. But literally, everything was imbued with God. Sickness meant demonic activity. Recovery was God's blessing, thanks. It rained, so God wanted you to have a good harvest. God created the entire world and then appeared to people to tell them the rules of the game. Sharing is good, but killing is bad. This is called a revelation. But God won't repeat it twice, so those who heard the instructions wrote them down in big important books, and then created an institution, the institution of the church, to share the knowledge with others. How to know what's good and what's bad? Well, consult the nearest priest or Brahmin. Spiritual life worked that way. But what do you think the life of the common people was like? First of all, the whole society was agrarian. That is, no cafes, beauty salons, or factories. Just fields of wheat or rice or whatever you grow in your climate. Up to 99% of the people lived like that, growing crops and herding livestock. Secondly, people were divided into estates, and each estate had its own rights and responsibilities, which were sexually transmitted, that is, by inheritance. It was almost impossible to pass from one class to another. The prime example is the castes in India, which are better called Varnas. Here are the Brahmins, priests, and scholars. Here are the Kshatriyas, warriors and kings, Vaishyas, farmers and artisans, Shudras, servants and laborers. And here are those who fell down the shaft of the social elevator, the untouchables. They did the dirtiest work, scavenging, butchering, leather crafting, doing laundry, and working with clay. Their career ladder looked like this. In ancient times, a slumdog couldn't become a millionaire. He wasn't even allowed to approach people of higher castes lest he accidentally defiles them. Yes, they believed that birthplace determined a walk of life. No need to complain, since everyone was born in his group because of karma. That is, you behaved badly in your past life, so please live such a life now. If you behave better in this life, the next life will be good for you. That's a simple thought. For now, we all stay where we are, live, and don't complain, since it has been arranged by God. The monarch also received his authority from God and is accountable only to him. He can't be judged, and any attempt to overthrow him is blasphemy and disrespect to God. In the documents, it was written, "By the grace of God, the sovereign commands you this and that." Signed, seal. No one argued with such legitimacy except the other claimants to the throne, since they also had a divine right. No one challenged such a social order, because they couldn't change anything or go anywhere in their lifetime. The roads were inconvenient and dangerous, with bandits and disease waiting along the way. People traveled mostly on foot or on horseback, and sometimes by boat. And the goal wasn't tourism, but military campaigns and pilgrimage. People would walk about 15 miles a day. It's so slow that you could get married, raise a son, and die during the trip. So, a medieval fig for you instead of exploring the world. So, most peasants and artisans lived in a filter bubble. That is, their world was limited to a walking radius. The overseas animals could only be seen in shitty engravings. What or who do you think it is? A wonderfish, maybe a whale, right? No, that's a whale. And that is actually a hippo. And here's a crocodile, which has been depicted in many ways. It's mentioned in the Bible, so they had to show it. But nobody could go to Egypt and see it. And here's the turtle. Well, it's armored, so it might wear shields. That's the logic. All right, what's this one? That, you'll never guess, is an oyster. Why does it look like that? Because everything was painted by word of mouth or hearsay. Travel bloggers like Marco Polo or Afanasi Nikitin were the exception. Therefore, learning that there were other people out there who believed in other gods, that had polygamy or ate with chopsticks, was almost impossible for most people. This way of life directly influenced the thinking of the pre-modern. Earthly life was only a prelude to eternal. That is, the one that comes after death. That's why it was the one to arrange. While most people lived in huts, cabins, and lodges, the gods had lavish temples like the Pantheon in ancient Greece, the Angkor Wat in Cambodia, or the giant Karnak temple complex in Egypt. Thousands of people sacrificed their lives to build the pyramids, since Pharaoh was a god and his afterlife was the concern of all his subjects. In other words, if you've been building a temple for God all your life, then God will reward you after death with a better life. You see, it makes sense. You should try harder. People lived according to tradition. That is, man by the plow, woman by the hearth. Besides, one should listen to and obey people of authority. Patriarchy reigns in the family. That is, the power belongs to the eldest man. He knows how to live, what to do, and all the land will be inherited by his eldest son. Do you remember the tale of the Puss in Boots? I'm sure you remember that the eldest son got the mill from his father, the middle son got a donkey, and the youngest only got a cat. Remember, in fairy tales, the youngest son is always left to fend for himself. And that's why it's so interesting to watch his adventures. He's always jiggling and inventing things. So patriarchy and the family, and strict hierarchy in the state. Hence, if the Pope or the King himself said that the sun revolves around the Earth, then the sun has no choice but to dumbly start revolving around the Earth, and that's it. Life in the Middle Ages was a zero-sum game. That is, the total amount of resources didn't increase. What was produced, what was grown, that was eaten. The only opportunity to get richer existed, yes, but to get richer, you had to take the land from others, along with the peasants. Hence, the constant wars. Countries' borders were rebuilt, areas were conquered and reclaimed. The concept of the future as a constant development didn't exist. Work hard, don't f**k around, and wait for the Last Judgment. That's where we'll find out if you're a sinner or not. That's how they lived. To summarize, in the pre-modern, the whole world is God's temple. The source of truth is the church. Knowledge is passed on by word of mouth or in handwritten texts. All art is devoted to religion. Society is traditionally based on hierarchy and patriarchy. All work has to be done with one's hands, and the meaning of life is to follow the commandments and prepare for the afterlife. So it lasted for thousands of years. It seemed to be forever until it was over. In the 15th century, the world changes rapidly. Europeans discover America, Copernicus finally convinces society that the Earth revolves around the sun, not vice versa, and Gutenberg gets the idea that it's more convenient to print books rather than to rewrite them by hand, and that blows everyone's mind. Now literature is available not only to churchmen, but to anyone who can read. The first printed book was the Bible. But soon people realized it was interesting to read not only about gods and heroes, but also about people. And then, the art concentrated on the human being. Now, he is no longer the fruit of sin, but the crown of creation. Renaissance man thinks, therefore he exists. The ancient cult of the healthy body is revived. Philosophers understand that the government isn't divine either. It consists of the same people who just made a social contract among themselves. And at the end of the 18th century, the French not only overthrow the king, but also execute him, declare themselves a republic, and promulgate a Declaration of Human Rights. It turns out that citizens by default have the right to resist oppression, the presumption of innocence, freedom of speech, the right to private property, and many others. Meanwhile, science is discovering more and more new things. Evidently, the compass needle is moved by the Earth's magnetic field. That lightning is not magic, but electricity. And a steam engine is able to work instead of people. The Industrial Revolution begins in the 18th century. Factories smoke the sky, and yesterday's peasants move from the villages where 10 generations of their grandfathers lived to the big cities. Life has changed. Not by the will of gods, but by the man himself. Trying to realize the rapidly changing world, a man comes to a fundamentally new type of thinking: modern, from the word modernity. Not God must now lead man to heaven, but science and reason. And not after death, but right here on Earth. Protestantism asserts that people must profit and that labor is their service to God. In simple terms, saving money is now a great idea. Earlier, your possessions were your house and livestock, but now you have spare money, which is able to be lent, borrowed, and multiplied. Open a factory, build a church, open another factory. Well done, a good member of society. Look, GDP per capita in Europe remained stagnant for thousands of years, and since the 19th century, it's been doubling in a single human life. After the invention of the steam locomotive, the chances of dying of illness or the hand of a robber while traveling have been dramatically reduced, and steamboats have allowed masses of people to move between continents. Life is no longer a zero-sum game. The common pie is growing too. The lives of most people get better. The poor peasant becomes a wage laborer, and the entrepreneurs and engineers become the masters of life, who can erect a symbol of progress, a 300-meter metal tower right in the center of Paris. Now you can leave the village, change a culture or even religion, get an education, and become a worker or even an entrepreneur. Get rich or die in a city ditch. The choice is yours, as they say. Before, my forefather walked in sandals, as did my grandfather, as did my father, and I will walk in sandals and teach my sons to do so. Now every day is a revolution. Industrial, political, or cultural. The canons in art have also been broken. Portraits replace religious subjects, followed by radically new genres. Impressionism, which in thin strokes conveys a fleeting impression. Cubism, that transforms everything into a geometric mosaic. Futurism, which looks to the future, and other avant-gardes. New genres appear in music, architecture, and literature. It just fuels the idea of constant growth and progress. The whole world in modern is a great mechanism. Any problem that can be solved, just give me the right screwdriver. That is technology. Give me a lever, and I shall move the world. Here are postcards predicting that we'll be able to walk on water and fly on wings. Special caps will protect the cities from bad weather. Postmen will be able to deliver letters right into apartments. And firemen would be able to reach the then inconceivable height of 10 stories. Air police would pursue air criminals. And flying traffic cops would regulate this chaos. Such a wonderful, bright future was imagined in the past. But who set the ideas? Who set the trends? Belief in the authorities in modern hasn't weakened, just that the churchmen were replaced by priests of truth. They were politicians and scientists. They encouraged people to do great things. If necessary, we could turn back the rivers, build cities in the desert, and split the atom. In the USSR, there was a real project to turn the Siberian rivers to supply water to the fields of Kazakhstan. While people in the pre-modern era got involved in building the pyramids just because God needed it, now they get involved in megaprojects because the state decided to do so. In the past, Moses parted the waters, and now it's done by state leaders who ordered to build a cascade of hydroelectric power plants on the Volga. The only thing needed to convince people that this is the right thing to do is ideology. Now we're going to change the world, and it will be great. Let's sum up. In modern, the whole world is a mechanism where each screw is responsible for its function, and the source of truth is science and scholars. They're trusted as unconditionally as priests used to be trusted. Information is transmitted through books, new genres flourish in the arts, society is getting industrialized, and manual labor is changing to machine one on a massive scale. The meaning of life in this new world is to know it to the full and to subjugate nature to ourselves. Modern reaches its apotheosis in the 20th century. People consider themselves the new gods and are ready, for the sake of ideas, to organize a revolution or to kill others. Planetary ideologies emerge, which claim to have scientifically deduced the ideal construction of society, the way of ideal society construction. For example, Nazism, communism, and global liberalism. Each claims to know how to create a paradise on Earth. Nazism is based on the idea of social Darwinism, making life a struggle for existence where the strongest survive. The goal of Nazism is the rebirth of the nation and the creation of a superhuman who will conquer everything. As a result, society in a particular country should come to unity, strength, purity of the nation, and victory over all the others. Communism is different. It emerged out of Marx's ideas. The goal is to lead people to a classless society without kings, priests, or bourgeoisie, which means no exploitation. Justice is everywhere, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Isn't this heaven on earth? Heaven, which is built on rational principles. That is, based on rules. The third great project of modern, global liberalism, leads to a planet where people are free from all restrictions of religion, tradition, and state. A person is the master of his life and can self-develop any way he wants. But all these great projects of modern failed to succeed. Nazism led to World War II and concentration camps. Attempting to build communism resulted in an economic collapse, starvation, and the Gulag. Liberalism is still alive, for example in America or Europe. But it failed as a global, planetary idea that promised happiness and freedom to every person on Earth. For example, the Americans failed to build democracy in Afghanistan. Not for me, say the Afghans, go away. The 20th century demonstrated that happiness can't be built on bones. You can't mindlessly change nature, turn back rivers, drain swamps, or impose your politics on the other side of the world with weapons. If global ideas turn into such crap, then maybe it's better to live without an idea at all. People got tired of being part of other people's global agendas. Philosophers call it the collapse of meta-narratives. In simple terms, it's the collapse of great ideologies. People have realized that both religion and science can lead to mistakes. Conversion to one's religion or ideology can end in blood, while science invented ever more effective ways to kill and led to the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What does it mean? It means that you don't have to trust any authority 100%. But always look for questions, ask questions, and look for answers yourself. At the same time, after World War II, technology changes dramatically, especially communications and media. Books are replaced by radio, television, and then the internet. Now everyone can express his priceless opinion. People in the Russian village discuss the trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and in New York they demand freedom for the Russian politician. Now, we're like old gossips who discuss our neighbors and think we know everything about everyone. We know all the reasons. Or, as the philosopher Marshall McLuhan said,
"The world is now a global village. A global village."
Here comes the era of postmodern or postmodernity. But in this paradigm, in this worldview, people no longer have any single, universal truth. Every point of view has a right to exist, as in this piece of art. Believe anything. Believe in God, believe in man, believe in a flying macaroni monster. The choice is yours, and there are as many genders as you want. In pre-modern, your body belongs to God, clan, or community. In modern, to the state. But in postmodern, you are the master of your own body. Your body, your business, as they say. You can do abortions, have your body tattooed, implant a card into your palm, and anything else. You can do anything. What about art? Postmodern art does not create great new meanings, but instead deconstructs, that is, breaking down existing ones. Pop art deconstructs consumer society. Sauts art, the Soviet ideology, and films like The Matrix deconstruct the reality in which we live. But the quintessential postmodern art is, of course, the memes, which will be discussed in the upcoming videos. They are ironic and cynical, breaking norms, blending ready-made images, and joking even at the very format of memes. So, in the pre-modern, the world is a temple of God, that is, a space where people were provided with perfect conditions, water to drink, animals to eat, and air to breathe. From up there came the rules of how to use everything, in the form of the Bible and other sacred texts. In modern, things are different. The world is a large and complex mechanism where some gears actuate others, like in the Rube Goldberg machine, where objects fall, blow, roll, collide, and thus actuate the machine that produces the result. It was believed that science would help us discover how each of the gears worked, and thus understand how the entire mechanism, the entire planet, the entire universe works. All you have to do is push a certain point, and that's it, and move the planet. Press here, twist here, and you'll be fine. In the USSR, they wanted to standardize human life with the help of science. Roughly speaking, he needs a toothbrush here, a few square feet in the kitchen, there's a window, and a factory to work. That's it. This is the man of the future, and his every move is predetermined. The reality is more complicated. It's impossible to fully predict a life from birth to death. We are constantly changing. It's impossible to mark all our actions on paper, put a stamp on it, and go to work. No. Even the precise science of physics can't calculate all the processes to the end. It seemed that mathematics would calculate everything, but no, it still didn't. In the quantum world happen absolutely random processes that can't be predicted in advance. Moreover, the observation itself changes the result. When we look at the particles, they behave one way, and when we don't look, behave differently. In the social sciences, it works as well. Apparently, Marx didn't discover the truth, but constructed it. He constructed a utopia that millions of people rushed to build. And this was modern. And in the postmodern, we realized that a single truth does not exist. The entire world is a text. What does that mean? It means that the world is a set of ideas and symbols that construct our reality. And there is no one idea. No one universal dream that can apply to everyone. Yeah, okay, let's go. Because all countries and all religions live in their symbols and images. Well, Americans have one worldview, the Chinese have another view, and Muslims have a third. We've invented the American dream, where everyone has a house in the suburbs and a few cars. And lots of Americans began to live like that. Another example, Coca-Cola invented the image of Christmas, and Chinese cities turned into factories for the production of gifts and decorations. Now the holiday smells not of pine and pastries, but of paint and quick-drying glue. In postmodern, not religion nor science creates new meanings, but art. We try on the images we've seen on TV or on the internet. Watching Friends, you realize that it's possible to rent an apartment with your friends and they'll be your new family. We watch Sex and the City and realize that sex can be discussed and joked about. The series Euphoria made more and more teenagers think about their identity and put on glitter. We worry about the characters' relationships more than about our own because we need to build our own relationships according to their model. The whole world is a text for us, an artwork, and we play a part in it. Notice what's happening now. Harry Potter actually replaced the Bible for many people. They search for an analogy to reality there, as if all this battle between good and evil had already occurred in the book. Some people give a lecture on the nature of power in The Lord of the Rings, where the main character is the weak Frodo, and the feat is not about showing yourself in battle, but about not despairing when the darkness strengthens. And here's the most popular example. We're sure that everything that's happening now has already happened in The Simpsons and South Park. Or as we say in our office, everything will be shown on this channel. Indeed, we feel like we will cover all of the topics, so don't forget to subscribe. So, postmodern is a period of doubt. Constant doubt. Every time we ask ourselves, how did I get here? Where do I go? Who am I? Am I more of a Monica or Rachel? Choleric, phlegmatic, Flora or Techna from the Winx? Is my life a comedy or a tragedy? The pre-modern peasant couldn't even think about it. Because his role was predetermined from birth, he never reflected. The role of man in modern was determined by society and the state. And now in the postmodern, we all keep asking ourselves these questions. Who am I? And what is the meaning of life? But we will never find the answer. Because one single truth doesn't exist for us. It's just gone. So before we move on to the most interesting part, the present time, the metamodern, let's summarize. In the postmodern, the world is a text. Truth doesn't exist at all. Information is transmitted at the speed of light. Art is totally deconstructed. Society is informational due to the internet. Life has no meaning at all. Chaos, games, and randomness are everywhere. You have to constantly doubt everything and ask yourself, am I bullshit right now? Therefore, nothing is true, everything is permitted. Seems to be so. Well, in postmodernity, you are your own king, god, hero. You are free and life is aimless, and therefore, meaningless? This way we might reach the point of denying everything, all values and rules. People now sneer at God, at terrorism, at disability, at children, at the elderly, at death. It's like living in a Fight Club world.
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
Then what is the point of living? Interesting question. This is the crisis of postmodern. People are missing something reasonable, something good, something eternal. Like a purpose in life, or a cheap and tasty ice cream that's from our childhood. Or like an old ideology which once died, but now they're trying to revive it, dig it out of the grave. People lack some kind of value in life. If we have different definitions of what's good and what's bad, then how do we find a universal value? Something that is truly important to everyone. The American philosopher Rorty formulated this value as follows: an intolerance for cruelty. Yeah, we may see the world differently and aspire to a different future, but if a being is capable of feeling pain, we must not inflict it. And that's the only universal value. Therefore, all the world is not an accident or chaos, but there is something good and eternal. Yes, that's where metamodernism begins. Some people think that, some people consider that it goes back to the 90s. But in fact, it's the same postmodernism, which is just a little bit retrograde to the modern. So it turns out that you can make jokes and make ironies about whatever you want. But there are important, serious values that are good to aspire to. Metamodern can be explained in two words: new sincerity. Wes Anderson's Moonrise Kingdom is full of naive scenes, irony, and humor, but all this humor is served with a serious face. Children, unlike cynical adults, genuinely love each other, trying to build their own personal paradise, and we sympathize with them without any irony. And even modern cartoons like Adventure Time and Gravity Falls, though filled with sci-fi, tell a story of sincere friendship and sincere love. Earlier people might say, are you a loser to feel ashamed? Feelings are nothing. Be a man. Men don't cry. Now it's, I'm a loser, but I'm free. I ain't ashamed to be sincere. I feel, therefore, I exist. It's like the meme, I'm cringe, but I'm free. Your playlist might contain tracks by Little Big, a part of a Broadway musical, and a Linkin Park throat singing cover. And you have the right to enjoy each of them. In Postmodern, you could say, what a wonderful movie. I even puked at the end because it was disgusting. Sounds sincere, but in fact, it's another layer of irony. But in Metamodern, you can be completely sincere and say, what a load of crap I just saw. But I liked it. Is there more? The Room was voted the worst movie of all time, which is why millions of people watch it every year. Yes, it sucks, but it's awesome. So bad, it's even good. See for yourself, since shameful pleasure is no longer shameful. Only violence is shameful. In any case, the Metamodern is a new development of the postmodern. And its ideas can be shortened as follows. Yes, you can deny everything absolutely, but friendship, love, and development are good. It's fine in the Metamodern. But violence is totally unacceptable. It's not okay. And while boomers accuse the TikTok generation of having nothing sacred, the Zoomers call for a radical rejection of violence, spreading videos on how to recognize domestic abuse and how to confront it on TikTok itself. Now, notice it's hard to argue with parents about the humor of human rights and the acceptability of violence, right? Right. It's because most of them, many of them, are people of a modern, who are willing to defend their truth, who believe in a single truth, norms, and values. They are ready to use violence to preserve them. Just tell them, okay, boomer. And remember, neither paradigm or era is better than the other. They just flow smoothly into each other. Pre-modern to modern, modern to postmodern, and postmodern again a little bit to modern, thus resulting in the metamodern. Different worldviews were changing, sprouting into each other. Rational thinking didn't supplant mystical one. Rather, they existed simultaneously. The development of science in the 19th century didn't hinder the growing popularity of spiritualistic seances, instead the latter. I mean, all this magic was explained in a new way. For example, electricity, which was popular at the time. Electricity is in the air, so the spirit appears in the air due to electricity. Spirit comes from electricity. Throughout this video, we talked mostly about Western culture, which has developed a little faster in social paradigms. But all three of these paradigms exist simultaneously alongside each other. In some places, there's still the pre-modern, far to the east or down in South America. Nowadays, people in Afghanistan offer to roll back to the religious pre-modern, build a society on the basis of Sharia norms, and revive, say, the Middle Ages. It's forbidden to play, sing, listen to music, and fly kites in the country. It happens in 2023. At the same time, we're surrounded by people of modern, convinced that they've figured out how to live. They're trying to bring back ideology, believing in a great idea, and technology that will lead all of humanity to bliss. Politicians constantly refer to the values of modern and promise to make the country great again, although many citizens no longer need that. They live in the postmodern and want freedom, not ideology. What is the meaning of your life? Decide for yourself. Just make sure you don't destroy the planet in search of the answer. And as always, pump your brains. Bye.